Patriotism or nationalism sometimes, or I would say that this has become a very important theme nowadays. We hear a lot about patriotism and nationalism. Sometimes it goes to the extent of becoming jingoism or military jingoism. And it's become quite fashionable or trendy to talk about this. Everybody has suddenly become patriotic, and people are wearing their patriotism on their sleeves, so to speak. It is very prominent, and you are supposed to show it all the time, and as if people were unpatriotic, and suddenly everybody has become patriotic. Now, actually speaking, I don't see this as a big deal. I mean, everybody is generally patriotic. It's not a special virtue. I mean, it's quite a common thing. There is no big deal about being patriotic. You love your country because it is your country. You love your family because it's your family. You love your kids because they are your kids. You love your parents because they are your parents. You love your wife, hopefully, because she is your wife. You love your parents because they are your parents. Something similar like that. It's similar to that. So it's quite a common thing to be patriotic. Even gangsters and criminals are patriotic, I have seen. So why have we put this on a pedestal as if it is something, as if it is a special virtue or something? It's a default setting, I would say. Being patriotic is the default setting. Everybody is generally patriotic. Of course, there are traitors and there are people who commit treason and stuff like that, but they are few and far between. I mean, the majority of the people, the public, is patriotic. So it's not something, a unique, special virtue that has to be worshipped all the time. It's quite common. And we love our people, our country, because they are ours. There is a sense of belongingness or ownership or whatever you call it. It, I mean, and it's not necessarily, doesn't necessarily mean that they are the best. And what best? What is the meaning of the best? I love my kids because they are geniuses? Not necessarily. I love them because they are my kids. I love my mother because she is my mother. I love my mother more than somebody else's mother. Does it mean that my mother is the best mother in the world? For me, she might be. For somebody else, his or her mother would be the best in the world. And how do we compare what is good and bad? And so we love our country because it is our country. Doesn't have to mean that it is the best country in the world. And what does being the best mean in any case? How do we compare? I mean, each country has got good points. Some countries have some superior stuff. Other countries have some other superior stuff. Each culture, each civilization would have its own special, unique characteristics, good characteristics. So how do we say that we are the best? Does it mean that the others are worse and we are superior to every other civilization or every other country in every which way possible? How do we define that, and how do we know that for sure? So it doesn't sound very noble to do that. I mean, we love our country because it is the best country in the world. No, we love our country because it is our country, and there are other countries, and citizens of those other countries have every right to love their own country, and their country is also good. Doesn't mean our country is doesn't we don't have to prove our superiority. They would also try to prove their superiority. And what are the measures of superiority? Is there an objective measure? Does it mean by how many gold medals you won in the Olympic Games? Some country wins more medals. Some country is an economically bigger country. Some country is militarily bigger. Some country has nuclear power. The other country doesn't have that. Some country is largely populated. Other countries are sparsely populated. So there are different parameters for comparison. So are we saying that there are objective parameters, and on all objective parameters our particular country is the best in the world? Why do we have to think like that? So we should not get too carried away by this idea. And this idea has been around, and I think people have generally been patriotic. It has somehow become fashionable to bring it out now. It was there, but now it has taken the pride of place, so to speak, and it has become something that you display, put it on show, wear it on your sleeve, and display and exhibit it all the time. Not necessary. There is no need to do that. And patriotism is a very ordinary, common human sentiment. Most people are patriotic. As I said, everybody loves his family, his country, his children, his parents. So let's not make a big deal out of it. And let's not decry other countries and other civilizations. They have their good points, we have our good points, and everybody has maybe some strengths and some weaknesses. So no point in unnecessary comparisons of that sort. That leads to rivalry, jealousy, animosity, enmity, hostility, and stuff like that. Unnecessary pride and ego, which is again bad for the nation as well as for a human being. If ego is bad for a human being, ego can be bad for a nation also, right? So I am a bit surprised when there is all this groundswell of patriotism. And what are we supposed to love actually? When we say we love our country, does it mean that we love the stones and sand and earth, or does it mean that we love our people? Now, that when the question is about loving all your citizens, then I think there are issues. You don't love all your citizens equally well, then you have other issues. You love your types, your kind more than the other kind. So when it comes to loving your country, you only love some. You love your country minus its people, first of all. You love your country minus its people, the inorganic stuff, maybe the river and the water and the air and the earth. Whether the air is polluted or not is a different story. And when it comes to people, you only love some people. Do you love the poor in your country? Do you love people of other religions in your country? Or do you love people only of your caste and your religion and your class? So that's again a question. When it comes to loving your country, I think firstly you should love all your citizens, all your fellow citizens, all your fellow countrymen. And the inorganic stuff like borders and sand and stones and trees and animals and all that, maybe that's not the loving. When it comes to loving the inorganic stuff like sand and stones and maybe then later on animals and trees, that shouldn't be the priority. The priority should be about loving your fellow citizens, fellow countrymen. So the question is, what about other countries? Don't they deserve to be treated with respect and fairness and justice? We are the best, so we should rule and others should suffer, and doesn't really matter. I mean, then there is, when it comes to international relations, we only look at national interests. And that seems to be, again, that is a very stupid and not so noble thing to do. Each country looks out for its own interest. And somehow it has become the accepted practice, the standard practice. Americans would say that, American interests matter. For America, American interests matter. For India, Indian interests matter. So we are all looking out for after our own interests. Does it mean that one particular country is fixated only on its own interests at the cost of the interests of other countries? Does it mean that anything goes? Does it mean that you can treat other countries unfairly, take undue advantage of them, treat them shabbily, ride roughshod over them, bulldoze them, winner take all kind of a mentality, a zero sum game where you win and others lose, and that's supposed to be the smart, good thing to do? That doesn't seem to be very moral or very ethical or very noble. Einstein thought of or conceived of a world government. If there is a world government, there is one world in the country. There is just one country and the whole world is one country. Then you don't have these internal issues. You would still have, like even in a country, there is within a country or within a nation, states compete. So then so that would be there. That problem wouldn't go away completely, but at least this sovereign nation state thing would become sovereign world, one sovereign world. Then this thing might, the international rivalry and international animosity and international competition, that evil to some extent would subside. That is not happening. That doesn't seem to be likely to be happening anytime soon. So I think we need to moderate this idea of national interest and self-interest of a particular nation. That doesn't seem to be very, very ethical or very fair or very just or very noble. Other countries, like in a society, people are equal and we must respect each other and look out after. Everybody has rights, and we must respect their rights, and everybody has to be treated fairly and justly. So even in international relations, countries should start thinking like this. Treat other countries also with respect and fairness, and try to have justice rather than have national interest as the overriding, overarching theme. That's a wish, kind of wish that I have, but I know it's a pipe's dream in the current environment. But what's the harm in wishing for it anyway? And sometimes self-interest and selfishness happens even inside the country or within the country. Samuel Johnson famously said that patriotism is the last refuge of the scoundrel. Sometimes, somebody is trying to be very patriotic, but that person is being patriotic because he gets an advantage out of being patriotic. For example, a businessman would want his countrymen to boycott imports, not because he is patriotic, but that means he doesn't have to compete with foreign goods, and he can sell lousy goods and make maybe goods which are lousier or substandard quality, inferior to imported goods, and still cost more than imported goods. So this businessman makes profit, exorbitant profit, because he doesn't have international competition. So he would say that, look, let's all be patriotic and let's boycott foreign goods. So then it is not, he is not being patriotic or preaching patriotism out of any nobility. It is simply his self or her selfishness. So that's why he called it the last refuge of the scoundrel. I would be happy if I have no competition, no international competition, and I can get away with selling substandard goods, because imported goods might be better quality. So if I have to compete, I have to have a better quality than them. And if they are cheaper, then I have to reduce my prices. If I have no foreign competition, I can sell my goods at any price that I want, and I make money. And then I say I'm patriotic and ask others to be patriotic by buying stuff from me. Oh, that's not out of any sense of nobility, good cause, and greatness, and all that. It's simply being selfish. So we have to keep these things in mind and understand these motivations also. So we don't necessarily have to prove that to love our country, we don't have to prove that others are inferior. We love our country simply because our country, and doesn't mean that we have to prove that we are superior to others. If we are superior, fine. If we are not superior and others are superior in some other way, why should it bother us? Why do we feel compelled to prove that we are smarter than the others and better than the others in every which way? Our civilization is the best in the world, as if others are lousy and worthless, and we are the best possible, the best, smartest, most powerful country in the world. Only then can we be patriotic? No. As I said, it's our country, so we love it. It's like almost like blood relation. You love your family member because of blood relation. So you're born in this place. You are a citizen of this place. So you love this place. If we are good, fine. If we have a if we are technologically superior to somebody, fine. If we are not, why try to prove it and concoct proofs? No need to do that. That's silly and stupid and idiotic. Also, generally, people who have benefited because of a particular system love that system. So generally, you would find successful and happy people to be more patriotic, and people who have not done well would not be so patriotic. It's quite possible. The poor people, even they are patriotic generally, but generally, people who love a particular system are the people who have benefited because of that system. So sometimes within a society, you fight for the established order or the status quo because that status quo has benefited you, and those who have not benefited by that status quo might have things to say against it. So that may apply to patriotism also. Those who have done well find it economically sensible to praise the country and its systems, and those who have not done well might feel that what's the big deal about it? This country, we love our country, but well, uh, others are doing better than us. But I think generally we find that even those who have not done well love the country maybe more than the people who have done well. So these distinctions also have to be kept in mind. Then we also need to remember that there are problems which are international problems. They are not national problems, like climate change. Now, in those kinds of problems, it's there is no international border or national border which will stop pollution and stuff like that. So these problems have to be tackled at the global level, at the international level, and then you can't have country specific issues. People have to collaborate. There are problems that face the earth. There are common problems, global problems, international problems that affect every nation. And in that sense, this narrower thinking of a nation state doesn't help. Everybody has to think about the earth and problems that the earth faces, and climate change, and international problems of that sort. Problems without passports, once Shashi Tharoor called them. Like climate change is a problem without a passport. It can pollution can doesn't need can cross the country, one country to other country. Atomic radiation, nuclear radiation, there is an atomic explosion in one country, and the radiation would simply cross over into the neighboring country. You don't have walls to prevent that kind of radiation spreading in other places. So these are common problems, international problems. So there are international problems which require international collaboration and solutions. You can't just think about one particular nation state or sovereignty in that sense sometimes. And on a related note, I would also like to talk about this concept of being Aatmanirbhar or self-reliant. It's a good thing, but the one of the things is that earlier economics was about if there are two things that two countries can do, then the country should do concentrate on doing the thing that it can do well and leave the other thing to the other country. If there are two products and a country A is good at making one product and country B is good at making the other product, then each country should focus on that particular product and export that product and use it, and import the other product because it is not as efficient as at making that product. That's what Ricardo talked about, and that's why we have international exports and stuff like that. So sometimes we need to prioritize. We don't need to do everything ourselves because we are not equally good at everything. Secondly, sometimes we need to import in order to export also. It's a very complicated thing. We buy something, some technology, some components, and we use it in turn. So we import, and in importing makes it possible for us to produce a product which can be exported. So even to do exports, we need import sometimes. So that's again a complication. So these things have to be kept in mind. The other issue is generally there is a reciprocity involved, which is what happened between China and America when President Trump talked about a trade war. I mean, China kept exporting to the US, and China is not importing anything from the US, and there is a huge trade deficit. Now, people say that don't worry about bilateral trade deficits, worry about the overall thing. But still, the point is, you can't say that I'm going to be exporting all the time and I'm just not going to import anything from you. So the other country would say, no, it doesn't work that way. If you want to export to me, fine, but then you also have to import from me. Otherwise, it doesn't work. So it is a mutual thing. There is interdependence. So self-reliance is good. It's a good idea. Aatmanirbharta is not a bad idea. We have to do that, but we can't just think that we can simply make everything ourselves and export everything to everybody else, and they will simply be okay with that, because they also have to worry about their foreign exchange, and it has to be an exchange, it has to be a trade. You buy this from me and I'll buy this from you. Only then there is balancing. Only then there is you have this trade deficit issues which would be resolved, and you have balance of payment and balance of trade issues. So you can't just say I'll be exporting everything and you have to import everything from me. The other country wouldn't agree, and because how are they going to manage their foreign exchange? That's a problem. So self reliance is good, but these other factors have to be kept in mind. So patriotism and nationalism, good, but let's look at it in context. Keep the context in mind, keep the other things in mind, and then talk about it. Thank you.